Good evening, viewers. Today, we are discussing about India-Japan relations during Prime Minister Shinzo Abe till Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. 2020 has been a year of many unprecedented uncertainties, which was created by the border standoff in the Himalayas as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, it is an honor for me to have a discussion with Mr. Shashank S. Patel, who is a research analyst at the Kutniti, and currently he is pursuing a PhD in East Asian Studies at the University of Delhi. So, we have witnessed various developments in India Japan relations in 2020 to 2021. So, the
Right.
first question I would like to ask is and during this 72nd Republic Day celebrations, former
Mhm.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, he was awarded the Padma Vibhushan for his
Right.
contributions. So,
Mhm.
what is your take on this?
Uh, for that, we have to also, we don't have to forget that Padma, the second highest honor, Padma Vibhushan, for his exceptional service in the field of public affairs. So all the things which is related to his career and his longest career as a serving prime minister for the Japan, when he actually left the first prime ministership in 2006 2007 session, in his book Utukusashi Kuni A, which means the towards a beautiful country. So, in that particular book, he pitched the idea of the broader Asia, which includes the India Pacific of, it's today's hot topic for discussion everywhere. That book also mentions to strengthen ties with India. His tenure exactly reflected what he wrote more than a decade ago. So India-Japan relations never be that deep in past as seen under the Prime Minister Abe. And the decisional output and its operational flexibility made Japan a key ally in East Asia. So this commemoration will pave path for the further integration of the bilateral relations with two key policies in my understanding. The first is the free and the open Indo-Pacific strategy, and second is the Asia policy. So these are the two bolster steps which was led by the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and India has benefited a lot from that.
Okay. The second question I have is after Prime Minister Abe's resignation in
Mhm.
September 2020,
Yeah.
a new era has begun, it seems, in the ties between the two countries.
Hmm.
So, how do you think the relations between India and Japan have redefined during Prime Minister Abe's tenure?
So, with the resignation of the Abe and the initiation of the start of the new era, I differ with the statement as it will pave path for the new era. I believe there is a continuation of the same policy, with the greater emphasis on focusing South Asia rather than Southeast Asia. So one should understand here that a resignation of the Abe led the LDP to Liberal Democratic Party, of which he is the prime minister candidate at that time, and he is also representing that LDP to decide whether the deputy PM Taro Aso will lead the nation, or the chief cabinet secretary at that time, Mr. Yoshihide Suga, will continue. So the new fragile era of LDP has started, but the bilateral relations continuity is expected as likely as it is. So we all also see that Japan has a trend of quick exit of the PMs till 2011, till Koizumi and the Abe. Post 2012, under Abe as the premier, he demonstrated how the PM can carry out the policy agenda for nation in long term, which impacted their foreign policy. In total, exactly in total. So he reduced the dependence on the multi-level, consensus, which is the long-term, scenario of the Japanese administration, which has to follow, and it is in the core of the Japanese policies. He also followed the bilateral coordination into from the front desk of the conversations. He oriented a new security and economic dimension too, which empowered him to resurrect rising and assertive policies, which with favorable countries like the India. and India was a prime focus for him to channelize the Japanese investment to a market from where the immediate returns will boost his efforts to de-stagnate the Japanese economy. As you all and we all know that the Japanese economy is in stagnation from 2011 onwards, and they are continuously making efforts to go into the deflation phase, but it is not going to up to plus minus 2% right now. So these gains are multi-focused with from geographic to strategic, from trade to commerce, from security architecture to foreign policy, gaining a lagging state with indefinite potential to use in the every sector in Japan, like domestic construction, caregivers, labor, etc. Helped him to bolster the Japan within the territory, and from the different angle, from the nationalistic angle, from suppressing the China to hook up to South Korea, modeling Russia to challenging USA. India is an asset for every manner. So his theory of confluence of two seas, which is now very famous in the in Indo-Pacific region. Uh,
Mhm.
Even in Indian Parliament, he told that in 2007, I guess, to articulate the India-Japan bilateral
Mhm.
focused vision till 2025. You know, and for that particular theory, on the basis of that, he mandated JAI, Japan, America, and India, and Quad-like initiatives, which is now the hot
Mhm.
topic of the discussions, and the
Mhm.
initiative to counter China in supply chain ecosystem with help of Australia and India is a master game in the region. So Abe's strategic calculations was so perfect that the internal and external balancing of pro and cons are mutually maintained. Initiatives like Shinkansen, the bullet train of India, Sister Cities concept,
Mhm.
collaborative training center under TITP, trade liberalizations are the milestones in bilateral relations for India and Japan. And also his efforts for escalating relations from strategic to special strategic
Mhm.
level in 2015, securing global commons on the idea of firming security cooperation, reciprocating the logistics and supplies through the acquisition and cross-servicing agreement (ACSA), binded both of the nations in deep bonds. And wherever you see each of the Abe's interaction with India has been marked by path-breaking agreements impacting the India's economic development, incremental Japanese involvement in the Indian economy. Abe realized the value of aligning Japan's economic relation with the rising Indian economy, uh, would constitute a key element in his efforts to build a dynamic, peaceful, and prosperous Asia. So it's not only about the India and Japan relation. He make it whole. It make it. He make it whole in a bundle in a bundle.
Okay. So another question I have is about India. What hopes do you have about hopes should New Delhi have about Yoshide Suga? What will he do for us?
For expectation, I will answer it in brief pointers.
Mhm.
The first is the continuation in ODA policies. That is the first and the foremost thing he has to, we are expecting from the Japan. Second is boosting marine cooperation, which is the sea lanes and the
Mhm.
securing the sea lanes, whether it will be in the energy or whether it will be in the communication. Third will be the technology transfer in quality infrastructure building, which
Mhm.
the Japan is an asset for us in that particular manner, whether it came under SDG or MDG. Japan is soul for India. Assistance in strategic peripheries, including Northeast and Andaman Islands. Just now, we have the marine internet connectivity from the Andaman Islands first after the 72 to 73 years of our freedom. On the fifth, I would say trade in the defense technology, because that is the biggest sector we are actually leaving right now, and it has an infinite potential. And for last, I would say fostering industrial networks via government industries, institutions like JICA, JETRO, like organizations, or whether it from the conglomerates of the Japan. So those are the expectations we have from the new Japanese Prime Minister. the Suga.
So it seems his new policies, Prime Minister Suga's new policies, are bound to bring a change in the Eastern Corridor as well as the Indo-Pacific region.
Hmm.
And what do you think would be his new strategy to bring about changes in changing regional dominance?
So, in regional dominance, or I can say Japanese, as far as I understand, Japanese politics and their domestic policies, Suga is not in the position to shift the foreign policy tenets. See, he is like the backbone of the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe when he was the premier of the nation. So, due to pertinent interventions by the senior leaders of factions in the LDP, which is the political association of Prime Minister, he is wisely not that powerful in comparison to his predecessor. So PM Suga already promised continuity prior to all this, and his first instruction to his foreign minister Motegi is to strengthen the India USA Japan USA alliance. So its default meaning seen in the new diplomat and when you see the new diplomatic blue book of the Japan 2020, where free and open Indo-Pacific was mentioned, it's actually the theme of that particular whole document. So FOIP is in the centrality of every single topic discussed there. So a new number of coordinated moves confirmed that Suga's administration will pursue the expanding strategic cooperation with like-minded partners in the region.
Hmm.
And on India's front, India has to reciprocate positively only on the key moments, and winds will flow by default in our favor. So the reason is the far eastern region is in the tumultuous geopolitical stage rather than the shallow waters of the Indian Ocean region. And the possibilities of resurrection of TPP in the economic domain fulfill the last vacant block of cumulative strategy in the Indo-Pacific. So Indian government prepped their far east ends to recuperate linkages and are ready to provide impetus to key supply chains in communication, trade and commerce channels, etc., etc. So it means the stronghold of India in its region will only grow. So there is no possibility of any intervention from any of the player to lead the region. Japanese development cooperation projects and impetus of Indian government on deepening strategic assets in key junctures assures the regional dominance for us. So in any of the situation, Japan and India are in the win-win. The bilateral relations are in win-win positions conditions.
Okay. And another thing I would like to ask is the Quadrilateral Security Initiative. How do you
Mhm.
think Tokyo and New Delhi could collaborate in this forum to increase further bilateralism?
Mm, for the bilateralism, to be very honest, Quad is majorly beneficial for Japan and USA in a strategic manner.
Hmm.
But for India, it is an alternative way out to contain China, to be very fair. And it's very straight and open to everyone. So we are benefiting only in the three major aspects. The first one is the liberal economic assistance that we are gaining from the USA and Japan, both of the entities. Second is the power balance with China, which is required for the regionalism and to maintain the regional stability. Okay, the power the power rift between the nations. And the third one is the dedicated supply chains in blue waters, because we don't have that much potential to control or operate in the blue waters. So we have the capacity in the shallow waters only. uh, Although that is not up to the mark to say in that particular way, but somehow it is the reality that yes, we are not that prudent. uh, so in all these aspects, these are there are infinite yet limited opportunities for growth of India and Japan bilateral relation. And one of the reason is dominance. Okay. uh, Dominance and interference by USA in majority of the initiatives, which will uh, affect or impact the India Japan bilateral relation in some manners. So with the emergence of the new leaders at Tokyo and Washington DC, both free and open, turning towards the peaceful and prosperous, So the keywords are now changing from the whole narrative started from 2017. Earlier it was FOIP, which was reflected in Japanese Blue Book also, and now it is not free and open Indo-Pacific. It is now peaceful and prosperous in Indo-Pacific squads. So the strategy, so the keywords are changing. It means there is a shift in some type of policies. So everyone must learn from the past that whenever the lion drinks water from pond, others remain thirsty due to fear, or it's not only by fear, by benevolence also. So hence for India and Japan bilateral relations, Quad offers limited possibilities but infinite options to grow on sidelines. We cannot grow that much in that group, but yes, by that group, we can align on the sidelines. So, as the routine cooperation and consultation with the partners been institutionalized in Quad, bilateral relations will find its safe corners in the room, and it will, pave more. It will create more avenues for us to cooperate with Japan in side by side lines.
Okay. So, in the recent past, we have seen Tokyo and New Delhi
Mhm.
going forward with the defense relations. We have seen a lot of developments.
Yeah,
And as far as the threat of China is concerned for India, when we
mm,
see the Galwan standoff and when we see the encirclement strategy, which Beijing is using through economic means in Gwadar, Hambantota, Chittagong, the
mhm.
same also goes for Tokyo, I feel,
Right.
with respect to the Senkaku and Diaoyu Islands issue.
Yeah, right.
So, how do you think the ties can be useful in countering such activities? We have a convergence, it
Yeah,
seems.
exactly. Especially to be very fair, despite of so much progress in the India-Japan bilateral
Mhm.
relationship, India gained less as suspected from last 5 years. You can see the bilateral trade figures, and you will easily say that even after escalating to the special strategic relationship, it's not gaining that much. There is a slight increment in 2019, and again it will due to COVID or whether the reasons are, it will also in the downfall. So bilateral trade is stagnated like Japanese economy, and the new ray of hope seen from the defense sector cooperation only, because that is the only way we have where we are opt out. So Japan's defense policies under PM Suga may largely stay to same as Abe's younger brother Nobuo Kishi, because he is holding the crucial defense portfolio, signifying the continuity with India. So Abe's revision of the Japan's security policy and his aspirations for constitutional revision were rooted in his neoconservative ideology. And Suga is not an ideologically driven revisionist. He is a conservative politician. So in this case, he will try at his best to maintain the status quo with Confucian societies in neighborhood and waters beyond. So there will be there will be always the impact of the steps taken by the neighbors on the policies of the Suga. So from a lot of time, I see this narrative building that a growing Indo-Japan cooperation will contain China in Asia. But I propose a new idea set here by saying that India is an anecdote for Japanese policymakers in Indian Ocean Rim. Although these words are not amusing to most optimistic analysts on working on Japan in both the nations. Okay, so but the fact remains that India is still a tool, not a weapon for the Japan in Indian Ocean region. So the reasons spread from the reasons are several, like from capability to possession, capacity to consumption, production lines to sustenance. India is not at that important for Japan in that particular manner, especially in the defense sector, because Japan is under the security umbrella of US, and we cannot go away with that fact. We are just a new ally. So China is never be the reason for cementing the India-Japan bilateral relation. To be very fair, several analysts say that there's, the problems with the heat is with China will strengthen or the cementing the India-Japan relations, but it's not that. This narrative was manufactured to give impetus to Chinese firm stand on the region, which hopes for countries like India. So posing China as threat gives actually fillip to aspirations of Beijing to grow in the minds of the competitors. Obviously, some short-term gains are seen in context of bilateral relations, but in the wholesome, this relationship is more based on co-development agenda rather than sidelining the China in the region. So, my submission is that South Asia is the future of the world for this century at least, where dominance of India has to ensured by any means, and Japan is the key ally to achieve that feat. But the dependence and severity must be decided prior. Jomon Japan is a benediction, but Tokugawa Japan is a curse. So we also have to see what was in the past and what is the future of the India-Japan relation.
So indeed, it is giving us a very clear understanding what Shashank just discussed with us about India-Japan relations, how they need to evolve in such changing times, and even
Mm.
I also agree with him that it still needs to evolve in this era of increased uncertainty.
Mm.
And what do you feel? My last question to you is
Yeah.
about India and Japan countering the BRI, where we have seen the projects they're carrying out in Northeast and the African Asian Growth Corridor. What do you feel about it?
So, in that particular question, I would only touch the first part, which is related to the northeast of India,
Hmm.
because there are several consistent developmental models are chalked out by the Indian government, where the Japanese investment and Japanese technologies paving path for the particular successive results, because we don't have that much capacity or the potential to to actually commensurate the results from that area due to several reasons. Several reasons are several, based on the economic, based on the political conflict, based on the regional conflict between the Bangladesh and the Bangladesh and Myanmar. Several problems were there, several geostrategic problems were there, but the solution which we saw is that the Japan, by its two-way strategy. The first one is the investment, and the second one, which is the consistency with the relationship. Even Japan has these several projects already working in the Northeast. JICA has this, I think, JICA and JETRO. Those are the it's like the organization which are actually saying the chaebols to go there and to work there, and that will be the biggest help for both of the nations, because there is not such an agency in India. MITI is not that sufficient to recuperate with the Japan to in that manner, but their organizations are very efficient in every manner, from the survey, from the human resources development, from etc. Everything was there. So Japan is like a prominent partner, but yet we have also maintain our stand, especially in the northeast and the border areas, because RBRO is not that not that asymptomatic as the other. I would be very cautious with the words in case of the BRO.
So now I would like to conclude this talk. It was indeed insightful, and it was an honor having you with us,
Thank
Shashank, for this. And I also would like to thank the audience for giving their time. And also, please subscribe to the Kutniti channel for further videos and developments in international affairs.
thank
I
you
would like to thank you for this. Thank
thank
you.
thank you Kutniti for the inviting me for this particular session. Thanks a lot.